Hi everyone, and welcome to Lesson 3 of the Human Resources Management in Healthcare course. So Lesson 3 is pretty much going to be all about legal and ethical environment. What we're going to learn in this particular lesson is going to be a bunch of policies, pretty much. That's really what we're going to be looking at today. And just to let you know, typically in classes that we have on campus, whenever we get into this particular chapter, I don't usually give a full lecture because most of the information here is you either know it or you don't. It's not so much about, learning and understanding concepts and trying to work with them and apply them. We just sort of need to memorize or get to know these policies, and so that we know that they're there and we know how to work with them. Usually what I do with this is I normally am going to have you guys make flashcards or do something like that so that you are able to become familiar and even memorize specific policies, okay, that are going to affect the work environment when you guys go out and work in the healthcare fields. But what I wanted to do with this lesson is just to kind of go over just a few certain terms and policies, just to clarify a couple things. Other than that, I do want you guys to do the exact same thing and go ahead and take a bunch of these terms. I believe from slide 3 or 4 and on, I want you to go ahead and take all those terms and make flashcards, okay? So remember what each one is, because when we have our exams and our quizzes, we're gonna need to know what those terms and what those policies do, okay? Just the basic gist of them, all right? But there are a few things where they might get confusing, or we should actually know how to use them as an example, and I do want to clarify a couple things in here. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly, and I may skip quite a bit of information, but that's all for you to go ahead and process on your own. And for me, I'm going to go through just some very specific things. All right? Okay. So first, right here, we have the let me get my pen. All right, so first we're going to look at the nature of employment laws. Okay, so the nature of employment laws govern the relationship between an employer and employee. So there are laws out there that help facilitate this interaction, because back in the old days, before we had laws like this, it was kind of like it was like employer versus employee. It just felt like a battle. Okay, so now we have laws that sort of govern the relationship between the two so that both sides can get what they need to get out of this interaction. Okay. So the goal here is to achieve a balance between management's right to pursue its business goals and the employee's freedom from injury, prejudice, and duress. Okay, so everyone deserves to have their rights. The business's owner, the management side, they need to be able to get the value out of their employees because they have a business to run. They have products to make or services to provide to their customers. And then the employees have their rights as well because they need to know that they're safe, that they have a safe working environment. They're not going to be facing possible injury. They don't want to face possible anything having to do with prejudice or any intense stress or anything like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. This is a list of a bunch of policies, equal employment opportunity laws that the federal government has put out there to sort of facilitate the relationship between employer and employee and make things fair, okay, so that everyone has an equal opportunity to work, okay. So what you're going to do is I want you to take most of these and go ahead and make flashcards for them. Okay, learn these on your own. Really, it's just when we have our exams and things like that, it's going to be you know them or you don't. Okay, so the best thing you can do or say is for you to go ahead and make flashcards with these. So let's go ahead and move forward. So first we're going to look at employment at will. Okay, so this is the principle that both the employee and the employer both have the right to terminate the work relationship or the working contract at any point in time, for whatever reason they have. Okay, it could be for no reason, could be for any reason. They're both allowed to terminate this employment relationship. Okay. All right, so first we're going to have, or next we're going to have the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. This is a very old, this is almost 100 years old now. But anyways, the Fair Labor Standards Act did something really great for employees in America. It set the minimum wage, okay, because back then people sometimes were not, paid very well for the value that they were providing for their employers. Okay, they weren't paid a very fair wage. Now, even though right now there's constant debate about, whether or not minimum wage should be a good living wage or whatnot, because due to inflation and everything, the prices, the cost of living is constantly rising, but minimum wage does not really keep up with that. Okay, so minimum wage is never high enough for people to have, a good, nice working wage. But so there's a lot of debate about that, and of course there are people or politicians out there trying to change that. Some people do not want that to change and whatnot. Also, the Fair Labor Standards Act requires that employers, when they have their employees work overtime, they requires them to pay their employees for a time and a half. Okay, so this is what required them to pay a time and a half anytime they work overtime. And this also governs regulations regarding child labor. Okay, well, we're not allowed to have children working in factories or anything like that anymore. But this established regulations governing child labor. And of course, many other things. Okay, so the Civil Rights Act of 1964 there have actually been several civil rights acts prior to this, but this is like the big one. This is the one that really took it this far, and we still hold on to this particular Civil Rights Act. The last amendment, I believe, that was made to this act was, I think, in 1990. But anyway, so this act makes it completely unlawful for you to discriminate, for an employer to discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It's also, the coverage extends to hiring, discharging, compensation, your benefits package, any kind of terms in the employment agreements, conditions, privileges of employment, things like that. Okay, so it does not allow you to discriminate based on any of those different characteristics. And another thing I do want to point out is that so this word right here, back in the old days when this was first put out, when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was created, they meant you're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of sex. When they said that, they meant male or female. However, today things have changed a lot. Okay. And so it is kind of under debate right now. I mean, many people believe and say that you can't discriminate against the LGBTQ community. It's definitely in this act and this policy. It should just be understood, right? And then you have other people coming on saying, no, that's not actually what it means. And, you know, there's no policy that really protects this group of people, okay, in the Civil Rights Act. So it's not super clear legally if this group is protected under the Civil Rights of 1964. However, we should probably assume that that would be included within this group. On a test, however, it might show up that this group may not be included in this Civil Rights Act, but I think in real life we should just assume, and we should definitely expect or consider it, you know, protected within this act. Okay. Because you know, it's under debate. I even just recently read an article about this still being under debate. So real life is always a little bit different than textbook knowledge, but just to put that out there. Anyway, let's move forward a little bit. And next we have the Americans with Disabilities Act. So this particular act makes it unlawful for you to discriminate against individuals who have a disability. Okay, and this could be a physical or mental impairment. Okay, if they have a record of this impairment, it counts. Even if they have their own accommodation for this impairment, you know, it's still, you cannot, you know, look at that. Even though maybe they have a hearing aid, you can't look at that and go, well, you clearly can't hear well, I'm not going to hire you for this. That's discrimination, okay? So whether they have accommodations for their impairment, whether they require accommodation for their impairment, whatever it is, you cannot discriminate against any individuals who have a physical or mental disability, okay? Okay, so now we have affirmative action. So this is part of the equal employment opportunity laws. Okay, so this is one big thing that the federal government put out there, and then they just want to kind of make sure that there are employment practices out there that are in place and that take race, gender, ethnicity, and all that into consideration and to promote equal opportunity. So the idea behind this is to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to get a job. Okay, so no one's being left out, no one's being discriminated against. We all have the same opportunity as everyone else to have a certain job. Okay, so some terms that we need to go through within this category would be, first of all, protected class. So what a protected class is it refers to a group of individuals who are protected under a particular law. Protected class is really just any specific minorities, women, people of certain religious groups, certain ethnic groups, things like that. Okay, so a group of individuals, and these individuals are protected under law, under a particular law. Okay, and then we have disparate impact. So this is when, this is the result of an employment practice. Okay, an employment practice that maybe a company decides to do a specific practice, okay, and really their intention behind this practice is very discriminatory, but they make it seem like it's very neutral, it's very fair, you know. So an example of what this can be is that, like, maybe a company that requires all of their men to have a very close shave, okay, like super close to where you have like baby skin, right? Well, not all men can do that because we all have different types of hair, different types of skin, And sometimes when you get like really close in there, you're going to have bumps. You could have those ingrown hairs. So it's almost kind of dangerous for some people, for certain people, to have very, very close shaves. Okay, and usually certain people who have the type of skin or hair that where they run risk of having like ingrown hairs, it's usually certain protected classes, like maybe African Americans or other ethnic groups who have that type of like who run risk of getting having those problems if they do a really close shave. Well, so if they can't get a close shave, what does that mean? They're not allowed to work? So that would be an example of the disparate impact. It's a practice that this organization has, and it may seem like it's neutral and it's very fair because they're making everyone do it, but it hurts a certain group of people. Okay, so it's actually being discriminatory, but they come off as it's neutral, it's fine, we're making everyone do it. Okay. And, it really discourages other people, or it might even get other people kicked out. Okay. Next, we're going to look at disparate treatment. Okay. So this one refers to an employment practice that treats employees or applicants differently on the basis of their protected class characteristics. Okay. So an example of what this could be is like, let's say in maybe like a call center or like a customer service call center, right? And maybe one of the employees who happens to be part of one ethnic group, of a certain ethnic group, right? And everyone else in that office is all part of the same ethnic, is all part of like the same group. There's only one member of a certain protected class within that office. Okay, so there's only one different person in that office, and maybe one day they fire that protected class person. Okay, and let's say the reason for why they let that person go is because they said, well, we got a complaint about you, so we let you go, you're done. Well, if all the other people in this office every so often might get a complaint about them and they don't get fired, only this guy got fired because he's, the one who's part of a protected class. If he's the one that gets fired, but the other people don't get fired when they get complaints, then there's some disparate treatment happening here. There's some discrimination happening. Okay, so that's bad. That would be disparate treatment. Anyway, let's move forward to the next slide. Okay, sexual harassment. One thing I do want to let everyone know about this, you guys can go ahead and read the chapter or the section of the book for more information, or even watch other videos. But one thing I do want to let everyone know is that there are really no like conditions or provisions that would make it so that so that it counts as sexual harassment in the workplace. If you believe that someone inflicted some sort of behavior on you that is considered objectionable because of any kind of sexual content, then that's sexual harassment. Okay, you don't have to have any witnesses. There doesn't have to be any kind of like managerial approval of what of the problem, the case, or anything like that. Okay, if this happened to you and this is what you believe exactly happened, you felt extremely uncomfortable, then that's what it is. Okay, so anyway, move forward. So here are some employee rights that you have with privacy. Okay, so you are allowed to deny or refuse drug testing. You're allowed to refuse searches and things like that, but then just might not work out well for you if you do. Okay. But anyway, but there can also, let's say your, is that here? So let's say you as an employee, you believe that discrimination was happening to you in the workplace. So you want to file a charge against your employer. And then maybe your employer goes, well, I'm going to fire you. That's not allowed to happen. That's unlawful for an employer to attempt to restrict an employee's right to file a charge of discrimination. So your employer can't stop you from filing this charge of discrimination, nor can your employer do something to retaliate against you. Okay. All right, move forward. Okay, you guys can go ahead and, this is something you guys can go ahead and look at by yourself. Let's see, issues in termination. Okay, so if you guys are an employer, right, you have employees and maybe you want to get rid of a certain employee. It's not always that easy, and you shouldn't always think of it as like, well, just lose the employee and then all of our problems will be solved. Okay, so you do need to keep in mind that there could be risk. Okay, you know, you have to keep in mind that your business has a strategy. You have a plan, you have goals, you have you know, things that you have to consider. So you definitely need to analyze the risk before you even terminate an individual. You need to look at what you could be facing by terminating their employment. Okay, are you going to have to pay you know, unemployment or anything like that? Is, you know, are the reasons for you terminating this employee's contract, is it something that you could get in trouble for? Is it because of discrimination or anything like that? So you kind of need to know exactly where you stand, what the risks are if you terminate this employee, and all of that. So you definitely need to figure out the risk. You need to avoid procrastination. So don't put things like this off. I mean, if you do need to terminate the employee, it is better. If you found that you do need to terminate the employee, it is better that you do it quickly, okay? Because you are wasting time and you're wasting money time. Okay, time is money. So if you find that it is beneficial, okay, the benefits outweigh the costs, do it, but don't waste any more time or money. Okay. Also, you want to choose a date strategically. You want to choose your date. You want to choose the way you do it strategically. Okay. So this all needs to be planned out very well. All right. You need to consult your human resources personnel just to make sure, you know, you're not going against any sort of law. Make sure that there's nothing that this employee may have against, you know, anything like that, right? And then go ahead and take action. You also need to consider possible severance agreements that you may have with this employee. So you might come up with a severance package for terminating their employment. Okay. You probably need to have a reason for, you know, terminating this employee, and you need to have grievance procedures in place. So what if this employee decides to grieve or anything like that? So you do need to make sure that even after you've terminated this employee, you need to make sure that everything else you're protected, and you know you have procedures in place just in case things don't work out smoothly. Okay, so you know exactly what you could be in for if you know, the employee starts to grieve, the employee files a case, or anything like that. Okay, so I hope that you've learned something from this lesson. Please make those flashcards, go over the information, and if you have any questions, please go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section or shoot me an email, and I will see you in lesson 4.